see right now, without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboy fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this team.
I'm ready.
I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face.
Oh, from Brooklyn.
Hey, guys, any...
This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
What's up, everybody? Another episode of Coast to Coast. I am your host, Pags. I am here with Bo. Jay is off on assignment today. At least he got assigned to do something. We're not sure exactly what it is, but he's assigned to do it, and he will not be here today. So, how you doing today, Bo?
Doing good, man. How about you?
Just living a dream. Just a little crispy from last night. We had our darts, and I had practiced. I started practice early, in my living room, and then next thing you know, I had to leave early because I was just a little too intoxicated last night. So yeah, sometimes the best way to help your team is to disappear.
That's right. That's right. I mean, Tony did that all year, right? He helped his team by disappearing and just not showing up.
Yeah, that's exactly it. When he did show up, all he did was cause problems. So just just be off sides. It doesn't matter. But no, actually, I shot well the first two games, and then I just realized that they didn't put me in game 3, and I guess I had, it all caught up to me at that point. I was like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to be best to help you guys in game 4. I'm going to go home.
Tapping out.
Yeah, and it was probably lucky that I did because it was, I barely made it home, and I didn't have very far to go.
Yeah, I was gonna say, going upstairs. That's that's a rough trip.
Yeah, it was, but sometimes you got to be smart enough to know when your limit is done.
Yep.
So
absolutely.
we did sweep yesterday, so we wound up winning 5.
Sweet.
So even though, like I said, I was good for my first 2 games. I shot 6 over my average, which is nice, for the 2 games, which is right on point, right where you're supposed to be. You want to be above average. So, as we get ready for the playoffs, that likely I'm probably not even going to be here for because I'm going to be in Florida, and it's really hard to throw a dart from Florida all the way up to Delaware County, Pennsylvania.
That's fair.
So. But, so be it. I'll be ready for the championships when they call me in. So I'll go down there and practice playing darts in Florida, because I hear the darts fly really nicely in Florida, especially this time of year.
I mean, is there a spot where the darts don't fly well?
Well, they fly better in warm weather, as from what I understand.
Okay.
So
right.
if you're going to do that, you might as well have a good time in Florida, so.
No doubt.
I will practice down there as I am at spring training, watching the Phillies get started on their journey for winning the World Series this year.
Yeah. I mean, they have a shot. They have a shot.
I think that they are probably, on paper, they are the 3rd best team in the National League. And realistically, when it comes down to it, against the number 1 and the number 2 teams, they just, for some reason or another, the Phillies happen to have their numbers. They have the numbers of the Braves, especially when it comes to the playoffs. And usually we have the number of the Dodgers. Doesn't matter when we play them. We love playing in LA for some reason. Every time the Phillies go to LA, they usually take 3 of 4, if not 2 of 3.
Okay. I mean, that's a solid outing.
Yeah, so it's always.
I don't know if that'll be true this time around, but.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. Obviously, you're only going to have to face one of their pitchers. I mean, the other pitchers are okay and all, but they don't ever have a really good record against the Phillies. So you're going to have to go up against Yamamoto. but they're not going to have to face Otani
Nope.
because
Just
he's not going to be
as
pitching
bad.
this year. Yeah, and that's if it even does well. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I don't know how well he bat the last time, he had this surgery, if he did bat at all. So, but
Yeah, tough to say. I guess he's been doing well in batting practice, but that's not game speed type of stuff. So, um, but it means he is getting the bat around. So, I mean, you got to feel good about that if you're a Dodgers fan. But
and so here we go. Starting with the Phillies questions. Brad has always got lots of Phillies questions coming up. And someone said the Phillies are, which 20-1. But someone said, which 20-1 Phillies games would you like to go to see this year? Yep. So I mean, the games that I want to see, obviously, I love seeing the Dodgers. I love seeing the Mets. I love, those are always good games. We start off the season with the Braves, which is always nice. I think Houston comes to town this year, as we were in Houston last year. Or it might be the opposite way. I think Houston was here last year, so we go to Houston. There's no real team that is great to kind of go see better than others. I think the Yankees come here this year. We went there last year. We always seem to have a problem playing in Yankee Stadium, and I don't know why that is, but also I think this year I'm going to go out to Chicago for the July 4th. I think this year they play in Chicago for July 4th.
oh, that'd be
So
cool.
that would be fun to see. And of course, yes, going to the London series. I am doing those 2 games in London. So
That'll be awesome.
that'll be a lot of fun. That'll be a lot of fun to see how they treat, baseball over there in England. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's an interesting thing to kind of. And I didn't read this one, so I agree. I think they are a top 3 team in the National League, and when it comes to the playoffs, I think they're better suited to actually win in the playoffs. I feel like the Braves do exactly what the Braves do. They play very well in the regular season. However, they have a really difficult time, bringing it up a notch. Like when you get into the playoffs, you have to find that next gear, and it doesn't matter. This is what happens when great teams in the regular season get to the playoffs. That's why it happens in hockey more frequently than not than anything else. If you win the President's Cup, there's a good chance that you are not going to win in the playoffs because
Yeah.
it's funny as that sounds, you're
You beat
used
people early.
to beating people badly. You can't find that second gear. I mean, last year it was Boston. They broke all the records. They had the most amount of wins, the most amount of points in a season, and they just they were blowing people out all season long. They got to the playoffs. Actually, I was surprised that they did go 7 games and still lost. In the first round. It makes all of that regular season stuff doesn't matter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's a common situation across the board. Football's a little different. Football, you could be destroying teams. I know that obviously when you think about teams that have gone 15-1 and 16-0, them not winning it, like of course the Patriots going undefeated all the way to the Super Bowl and then losing the Super Bowl.
Yeah, but
you
you still
had
the Super Bowl. I mean, that's a little different than flaming out immediately. Like I'd be comparing that to the Lakers this year. They win the in-season tournament and then fall off the map after that.
Well, yeah, that's because they put that banner up.
Yeah, they're like, we already
Hey,
won.
we won the championship of the in-season tournament and all got $500,000.
Yep.
Let's go eat.
Yeah, pretty much. Season over. Thanks for playing.
Interestingly enough, the other Los Angeles team has really got a good chance for maybe the first time. I mean, they've had good teams going across, but this is like the first time that they could actually have a team that really could compete to get to the finals and possibly win it. You see a very, reimagined Harden, You know what I mean? Like Harden all of a sudden is like, oh, he remembers how to play basketball, and you have Kawhi Leonard, who's doing really well. I mean, they have a team that's kind of put in place down there that could really do it. Of
Yeah,
course,
individually, there's a lot of talent there.
yeah. I mean, interestingly enough, you're going to have OKC, which I believe is going to be one of the ones that flames out a little too early,
Yeah.
mostly because I think OKC is they got to get the playoff presence, So and that takes time. You may win one series, but it's just going to be hard because you have to do things a little differently than you're used to.
Yeah.
It's just not the same. What's up, Mickey? Mickey's, has I haven't
Hey.
seen Mickey in a little while, but he's around your area. Mickey is in
Oh, okay.
Seattle as well.
Oh, awesome.
So,
Very cool.
but it's like, and that's kind of what I think. I think that, that's why the Warriors are so good when it comes to playoff time. It doesn't matter what seed they are.
Yes.
The Denver is going to be tough to play against because they've been there. They are the defending champion.
Yep.
Those other teams is out of the top 8. Like when I think about on the Eastern Conference, obviously there's the Celtics, and there's the Bucks. Now the Bucks right now are having a really challenged time. We'll say is the best way I can explain that.
Yes, they
But
are.
Cleveland Cavalier, does anybody really believe that Cleveland Cavalier is going to make a run to the championships?
Not a chance.
I don't believe that. I don't think so. It's like I actually would give Miami Heat more of the chance
Absolutely.
than Cleveland. And Cleveland's got a much better record.
Well,
And the
I mean,
Celtics are so far above everybody else, but
that is something that the NBA has had for quite a while now, where if you have the best record, you probably aren't actually competing for the, in the championship games, let alone the finals, right? If you are the regular season warrior, you're probably a second round exit.
And then I look at the teams in the West. Let's go to the Western teams because it cracks me up that the Warriors are actually they're in the 10th spot. So it's like
They have not played good. They have not played well.
No, they have not. But they also you have the Lakers in the 9th spot, the Kings in the 8th spot. That's where they live. Dallas in the 7th spot. Again, that's kind of where they live. That's going to flip flop back and forth with New Orleans, who also could be right in that whole area. The Phoenix Suns. I guess you could say they have with Devin Booker and KD. You're going to have an opportunity to really compete. So you could say that they could start to do the things they need to do to be able to be.
So do you think that's a real thing? Because we haven't seen KD do anything without having an all-time great cast around him once the playoffs happen. Like they haven't lost because of him. So I'm not saying that, but he hasn't been able to find a way to get to that level, even when he's had amazing players. Not to discount Booker, right? Great player, but
right.
Still,
is that enough? Really, is that really enough?
Exactly.
You have the Denver Nuggets in the fourth spot, and they could live there. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter because, like, then they're the defending champions.
Yep.
Clippers in the 3 spot. So, and this is what's funny to me. You have the Minnesota Timberwolves in the number 1 and the Oklahoma City Thunder in the number 2 spot. Now, I know the Timberwolves have a good team.
They do.
But do you see them actually getting to the Western Conference Championship?
I don't see number 1 or number 2 getting
right.
there.
Yeah.
No, and that was my point, is if you are the regular season champ, especially in the NBA, it doesn't mean anything. Like back in the day, it mattered. But now it seems like these teams that are showing up in the 6th, 7th spots, they're the ones that are the more likely finals champ kind of range, because they're like some of their guys are resting. As much as I hate load management, they tend to have more of that, which is why they lose. It's why they don't have the regular season record, so they're a little more rested going into the playoffs. I mean, there's some things that go into it, but yeah, for years now, the teams that have been like the number one seed, they're not winning.
No, and I understand that. I mean, obviously the Celtics typically are the team. They have been the number one seed and typically make it to the finals,
Sure.
but again, they haven't won it in a couple of years, and that's fine, I guess. I mean, the last time that the Eastern won it was them, right? They won it the year
Yeah.
after the Bucks did.
Yeah.
So, but the Sixers themselves, they have a really difficult time. And there's a big game tonight against the Knicks. Obviously, we are the 5 seed, the Knicks are the 4 seed, and we're half a game out from each other. So if the Sixers were to win tonight, they actually would overtake the Knicks by a half a game. Losing, we would actually go down by a game and a half. But I don't think that's a really big deal because ultimately, I mean, you got the Pacers in the 6th spot, the Heat in the 7, and the Magic in the 8. Those teams are all only like a couple of games out from each other.
Yeah. No, it's a pretty
Can
tight
the
group.
Sixers get past the second round? It's almost worth it to be the number 7 seed to go up against Cleveland. I
Agreed.
think in a 7-game series, even a 5-game series, you're going to beat Cleveland. Especially if you have Embiid back. Now that's the big question: is Embiid going to be back? Is he going to be able to withstand the to get on the floor? And can you beat them without him on the floor if he can't make it back into the second round of the playoffs? That's another big question. So, I mean, obviously Cleveland is doing something pretty well or something right because they're 36-17. So, and
they still feel like they're probably the biggest fraud on this list.
Well, you know what? I would almost agree with you, except for the fact that their road record, they have the best road record in the East. Yeah, they have 17-8. The next one is 17-9. And when you think about all of the teams playing, the points against per game, their average points against per game is the only one under 110.
See, and that number just seems crazy to me anyway.
Yes. I agree with that. It's like,
I mean, every game is $120 plus at this point, which is dumb.
Well, what cracks me up here, the Atlanta Hawks are one of the only teams, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 teams in the East that score over 120 points a game. The Boston Celtics are at 120.7. The Bucks are 122 even. The Pacers are at 123.7.
Oh, wow.
And then the Hawks are at 121.3. However, the points against for the Bucks is 123.9. So they're still giving up almost 3 points a game more than what they're scoring, and they're scoring over 120 points a game.
Crazy.
So that is a little crazy. And then, like I said, obviously the teams that you have at the lower end of the spectrum, anybody who hasn't made it, actually number 9 and number 10 start there with the negative differential, negative points differential. So, everybody above has got a positive point differential. So it's kind of interesting how that all works out. That and on the opposite side, in the West, the only team that right now is in the playoffs that has a negative differential are the Lakers, and it's basically at even. Everybody else has got a negative differential, except below them, except like the Houston Rockets, which at a record of 24-30 still have a positive differential on their scoring. That they are still just about a point above per game with a losing record.
That means they blew a couple teams out. That's
Yeah, I mean some of that, but actually some of that is still, they got to keep it close when they lose.
No, for sure.
So that they're losing games. They're losing games probably by a couple of points, rather than getting blown out themselves. And they have
Yep.
blown out other teams. So, but basketball gets back started again today. So there's going to be a lot of interesting stuff that happens here. I think in the last 20 some points. There was something that I read the other day, or maybe it was like a little bit earlier today. Allen Iverson said that in today's NBA, he'd average about 40 points a game. I'd average 43 points per game in the modern NBA.
Yeah, I could see that because there's no defense. I mean, like Michael Jordan probably averaged 50. I mean,
yeah. He says he lost the scoring title to Kobe the year he averaged 35. I averaged 33, and I'm just thinking, like, if I want to play in this era where it's wide open, if I can average 33 in a season where I got hacked all the time, I'm going to be able to take it up to 43. I know that there's 10 points more per game. So
he's not wrong.
No, absolutely. Especially since when you drive to the line or to the lane, nobody's defending you anymore.
Yeah, no one crashes.
Nobody's playing defense. So he'd be able to crush it down there. He was getting hacked all the time. The time.
Brutally
too. Yeah, I mean, they were crushing him all the time, and still he still wound up being great. That's why it was funny when we're talking about practice.
Yes.
Not a game, practice. Not the game that I love, that I put myself out there all the time. Like you only ever hear about him saying practice, not a game, but practice. But he was talking about not the game that I love, that I go out there on 125% every time I hit the floor.
Yeah.
We're talking about
and get thrown on the ground constantly.
Right. Getting my just ass handed to me by these bigger guys because I am 5'9", listed at 6 foot. You know what I mean? It's it's like he was. It was awesome having him here, and it sucked that he had to go. Like, he started to really deteriorate. His body wasn't able to do the things he was doing beforehand. And that's really what caused him to have to get traded away and ultimately. But I mean, he will always, he's still he is still revered as one of the biggest icons in the world. Like Allen Iverson, it's like without a doubt, it's still you have Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, Shaquille O'Neal, Allen Iverson. It's I think that he's a bigger icon than, we'll say, like Magic Johnson, even, Larry Bird, like those guys, like Charles Barkley, even, you know what I mean? Like he was just a much bigger icon. Obviously, he learned how to not be in the public eye as much. He realized that the more he's in the public eye, the more wrong that he would seem to do. So,
yes.
It's like sometimes it's a hard lesson to learn. Some of the best lessons are hard lessons to learn. So,
I mean, they seem like they're all that way, and just life in general, right? Like every time something bad happens, somebody's like, "Oh, it's a learning experience." Like, I bet I could learn from some cool shit happening too. So if we could do some of that, it'd be all right.
Yeah, I don't ever learn lessons that way.
No,
my lessons are always the hardest.
It is always sandpaper to the nuts. Like it is, it's never like, oh, that was awesome, we should do that more. That's not how you ever get to learn stuff. It's like, oh, that was terrible, I'm going to remember not to do that again.
Exactly. So there was something that I got introduced to today, as I'm going to switch it up from basketball to baseball, since we are in the start of the season, and I think games actually start tomorrow. There may be even a couple of games that start today.
Yeah.
But the MLB has put out the top 10 cities they are considering for expansion.
Okay.
Now, interestingly enough, Vegas is not on this list. So I have to
yeah.
assume that they've already assumed that Vegas is getting an expansion team.
Well, no, because I think that why it's not on the list is because as it sits today, Oakland is still going there.
Well, as of right this second, but
Yeah.
that may change because the mayor says no. She don't want him there.
Well,
But
she says she seems more indifferent than anything. But at the end of the day, because they have something that's slated to go there, they're not going to be on the table for the expansion team until that deal falls apart. Now, if it falls apart, they'll probably be the number one prospect for an expansion team.
right, okay. And actually, interestingly enough, there is a game today. Today does start the games. The only game on the docket today for Major League Baseball, the Dodgers versus the Padres.
Okay.
So that's the first game that starts, and then there's a few games. There's like 5 or 6 games tomorrow, and then the whole slate of starts on Saturday the 24th. But here are the cities that are being looked at as potential spots. Top spot, Nashville.
Okay.
Nashville is the number one city in consideration, followed by Austin, San Antonio, Charlotte, Mexico City, Montreal, Orlando, Portland, Oregon, Raleigh, North Carolina, San Jose, California, and Salt Lake City.
Okay.
Now, out of those names, there are 3 names there that I kind of would love to see. Obviously, I don't believe in Montreal. I think that they had their chance, so I take them off the list.
Okay.
Mexico City, though,
That's intriguing.
intrigues me. That's
Yeah.
intriguing to me. I like Nashville as because it's a destination spot.
Sure.
You're going to have, especially in the summer, you're going to have opposing teams, fan bases come there to be able to do that. So I kind of like that whole idea. Orlando, I'm not a fan of. I don't think Orlando's a good spot.
No, I'm with you there.
I think of Austin / San Antonio. I mean, I understand that there is a lot of people that live in that area, but I feel like that the Texas Rangers kind of engulfs them.
Yeah.
But, I mean, there are 2 teams in New York. Why not having 2 teams in Dallas, in that area? I mean, there is 22 million people that live in the Dallas / Houston / San Antonio / Austin area. So you have a Houston team, you have a Texas Rangers team. Could you have a third team in there? I mean, I guess it's possible. I just don't see San Antonio as the spot, though.
No, I'm with you there.
Charlotte, North Carolina. Charlotte, North Carolina, or Raleigh, North Carolina.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
It'd be okay. Be all right.
Yeah, I mean, Charlotte's a growing city still. Every time I go down into Charlotte, and I've got friends that live in that area, it's always seems to be getting bigger. They have you always know a city is growing by how many cranes there are in the sky.
That is true.
And every time you go to Charlotte, there's at least 3 or 4 cranes. So, and that's how I know that they may be able to really do it. I haven't been to Raleigh, North Carolina, so I haven't been to one of those like the hockey game out there, the Hurricanes. I feel that if you're going to put it anywhere, you're going to put it in Charlotte. And I don't know that it has to be in North Carolina because Charlotte does have a part of it in South Carolina too. So could be either one of those.
Yep.
But I do like Mexico City. I do like Nashville. Portland, Oregon. What are your thoughts on that since it's close to you?
Yeah, I mean, so I can see them trying to put teams there moving forward. Portland is growing as a city. And outside of a basketball team, they kind of don't have anything. So I could see them starting to try and grow that sports, that sports area, especially with how well Seattle does with all of the major sports. So I could see them putting one there, another West Coast team. That's actually why I kind of lean away from like a San Jose team. I don't know if Cali needs another baseball team, but I don't remember if Portland has an MLS team. I don't. Admittedly, I don't follow soccer, so that's solidly on
Portland,
me.
yes, Portland does have an MLS team.
There
They do
you
have
go.
an MLS team.
So
Yeah, they're
but
the,
I just don't follow
the
soccer.
Portland City
so
Timbers, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, but yes, they do have it because I think that's our fourth game of the year. As I know
Okay.
that soccer starts up here. Soccer starts here on Saturday, and then we play the Sounders here week 3. It's going to be the week that I'm away, so I'm not even going to be able to talk about how the Seattle Sounders are because I'll be in Florida.
Yeah.
But Salt Lake City. So I think about baseball at Salt Lake City as in like baseball in Denver in April.
Sure.
There's a reason why you can't have the Rockies start the season off in Denver because snow days are real.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on what your stadium is, right? Like if you do a retractable roof or something like that, you could potentially do it. In fact, at this point, you'd almost have to do that. A lot of the new stadiums are all retractable roof at this point. So I could see, if they did something like that, a retractable roof or a dome or something like that could potentially work. Now I know everywhere's trying to get away from the domes a little bit. So, I could see it being a fit though.
So I can imagine as well because I for some reason thought that Salt Lake City is a much bigger city than it really is. I mean, I don't know. I just always think that there are millions of people that live there, because isn't that where the Mormons, home base is?
Yes.
Scientology maybe or something like that. I don't know. So like
No,
that's where
it's
everybody is.
Mormon. It's the Mormon community, and Utah's just an interesting spot because they still have dry counties there.
It's yep. There's dry towns in Pennsylvania, and you can always tell a dry town. Here's how you know if you're in a dry town in Pennsylvania. Most of the signs, the street signs, are black or green. But if you are in a dry town, those signs are red. Street signs are red. And that's how you know that you're in a dry town. So in Swarthmore, Pennsylvania, which is a town that I grew up in, that is a dry town, and most of their signs were red.
Weird.
Growing up. Now they went black and stuff like that because it's ultimately the black lasts longer and such, but that's how you know. And I thought that was sort of universal, that if you are in a dry town, that your street signs are usually red.
So that definitely wasn't the case in Utah. So it was funny. We drove through Utah going down to Mexico, right? And we stopped in and we went into this little spot and we're like, order a beer and a drink and whatever, right? And they're like, oh yeah, we don't do any of that. He's like, you got to go down the road about 15 miles and you'll cross over into the next county and you can buy that there. And I was like, okay, cool. Color me up. We're out. Cause when you're on the road for 8+ hours, towing a trailer, you're just like, I want a beer and some dinner, chill out. And that was not an option. So I was like, yep, we're gonna keep pushing down the road.
16 miles away, we did it again.
Absolutely.
We stopped and enjoyed a cocktail and an adult beverage and ultimately didn't have to worry about anything else. I mean, I got to imagine there's a lot of different areas. I mean, again, I've never been to Utah. So it's one of the states that I have not made it over to at all for any reason. I haven't even stopped in the airport. But when I think about Utah, I think about you know, what was that show on HBO? You know, where it was like with the sister wives and stuff like that, and they
Oh,
were
funny,
doing all that.
funny. I have no
So,
idea
but
what it was called, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
yeah, so I mean that's Big Love is what I think
Okay.
it was called. And just I kind of expect to see a lot of that out there. Now I know that it's really frowned upon now, and when you get into certain cities, you're having those big issues. But you know, it's I don't know. You know, I find that yeah, that's kind of what I think that that's still a big part of the life out there,
Yeah.
which is okay. It's kind of
Well, I mean,
interesting, I guess.
depending on where you are, for sure. But I mean, it's definitely a place to go check out because obviously you can check out things like the Grand Canyon, Bryce Canyon, Zion National Park, stuff like that. So all beautiful areas. So I mean, definitely worth going through. You can see parts of the Rockies, obviously too. So lots of cool stuff to see there. But yeah,
So my question becomes, in terms of baseball,
Mhm.
I assume that's up in the Rockies. You know, Salt Lake City is. I mean, the reason why they call it that city is that it's the largest. I mean, it's a Salt Lake,
yeah.
and it's the
So
highest lake in terms of elevation in the world.
it's not it's not like it's not like Denver, right?
Okay,
Like it doesn't have that kind of elevation. Like you are Salt Lake City, you are at the base of the Rockies.
okay,
You still have. I mean, the city still has some elevation to it, but it's not. Um, it's
not
not.
Denver-esque.
Not at all. Not at all. So yeah, you're really kind of at the base of the Rockies there. So it wouldn't be too bad. I think the for Salt Lake, what do they have? Like a million and a half people? Like it's not a crazy huge area.
Yeah, I don't know how many people are there, but
Yeah, I'm just spitballing that number, but I think it's somewhere around in there. If somebody's watching and knows, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's somewhere around in that area.
Salt Lake City is population of only 200,000.
Oh, that's probably just the city, though. I was thinking like the metro area that would be.
1.2.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
yes,
So
yeah, so it's
relatively
got
close.
1.2. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean,
So
but with 1.2, you could fill out a stadium.
yeah, I mean, I think that's enough people to really be able to do that, and I mean, I guess like it says, you want it to become a little bit of a destination. So obviously they don't. My thought would be is that if you were to move the Phoenix hockey team, because Phoenix has a really difficult time keeping their hockey team over there, why wouldn't you move them to Salt Lake? Like that might be a normal transition where I got to imagine they do have some type of hockey there. It's probably the ECHL or the WCHL, whatever it is. I don't know that
Yeah,
there's
one of the minor leagues.
East Coast or West Coast or anything like that. But uh, ultimately, I feel like that they probably do have some hockey there, so there is some type of balance, and they already have a stadium, where they play.
Yeah,
So it seems like it would be easy enough to kind of, hey, let's put out a hockey team over here and let's see if we can get them to fill up the arena.
yeah.
But to put a baseball team there and that be the second sport, I don't know. I mean, I think of BYU, they do have college football there. I mean,
Yep.
that's I assume that's the big team there. You're not going and looking out like Utah is, and also again, Utah University is just now started to come on the map in
Yeah.
terms of being able to play good college football. But there's no Utah State, or at least none that I've heard of. You know what I mean? I don't know
Yeah,
of any other
not
big.
that I know of.
Yeah, there's not Salt Lake City University. SLCU. I mean, there might be. I don't know. Maybe that's because I don't know what it is. Is it also? Well, no, because Gonzaga is in Seattle, is it not?
Yeah, well, it's in kind of central Washington, so it's yeah, it's a few hours away from Seattle.
So, okay, but I mean, I got to imagine there's other college towns in there. One and Air
Sure.
Force University.
Yeah.
That's. I know that they have you know their big bases over there as well. So
Yep.
there is some stuff, but for the most part, I feel like that Utah is
Well,
not
I mean,
a super desirable.
when you're looking at all of these locations, though, these are all small market teams outside of Mexico City, right? Everywhere else on this is in that kind of 1 to 1.5 million population kind of area. So, I mean, it's not like these are huge market teams that they're proposing anyway.
Well, Nashville's probably bigger, and then Montreal, same situation.
So, yeah,
Montreal's
Montreal will be bigger. What Nashville's only going to be like 2, though, probably, right? Like I don't like a lot of people travel there. I don't know how many. It's kind of like Vegas. There's a lot of people that travel there. The population there isn't crazy.
Yeah, I don't know how big Nashville is. Let's check that out. So,
Let's see.
but I mean, I figure like it's big enough because of the. So it's got the grand. The
actually,
population in the city is 600,000, but let's see how they. Yeah, it says it's 600,000, but it doesn't give me the full.
the metro.
Yeah, the metro areas and such.
Nashville. Here we go.
So
2 million. Yep, 2 million.
yeah.
2 million.
So and that's and like I said,
and actually
there's a lot of people that go there.
Portland had more than I thought. They're 2.5 million people in the metro area. So I mean, maybe those do make the most sense. Orlando doesn't make any sense to me at all, despite the fact that they are, 2.7 million.
Yeah, there's too much else going on in Orlando
Exactly.
to allow that to happen. Mexico City seems the most intriguing. The problem becomes that
21 million people, 21.8 million people from Mexico City.
right, but the issue becomes dealing with the fan base out there would be an interesting one. They are unique in how they root for their teams.
True.
And we found that out a little bit when you have football games down there.
Yep.
That they try to root for American football the same way they root for soccer.
Yes.
And we found also the other thing we found is that most of the people from Mexico City are 49ers fans. That they have a very strong contingent of 49ers fans. So, and that's what you see. I find that's what you find when you go to when 49ers fans travel.
Mhm.
There's a lot of them that are coming from Mexico. That there's a huge Mexican fan base of San Francisco 49ers. And that they are the ones that are causing some of the issues that the 49er fan base shows. When you see them fighting all the time, sometimes they're fighting with each other, and it's like there always seems to be getting into fights from the 49er fan base.
Yeah.
That it is that portion of the fan base. Because I tell you, nobody from San Francisco cares even a little bit about the 49ers. It's like out of all the teams out there, that's why they were able to move the team to Santa Clara and nobody cried.
Yeah,
they're
nobody
like,
even
oh,
noticed.
yeah, they're like, oh, yeah, woo, yeah, whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, let's get them out of the city.
Yep.
And unfortunately, same situation like that they have in Seattle. San Francisco has just been overrun by the, in certain areas, been overrun by the homeless population. It's become a big epidemic over there.
I mean, that's the West Coast in general.
Yeah, that's why when you take the underground tour in Seattle, it's such an interesting tour to take because that kind of goes into a little bit on why everybody, why the homeless, that seems to be the stop point. Because, if you are homeless, you're, 100% what you happens is that you naturally go west and
Well,
then you go north.
it's also a sanctuary city, so they accept it's part of the legislation. They accept you, like they bring you in. So unlike New York, where they're like, "Here's a bus pass, see you later," it's it's we'll take you here, and it's why we have the issues on the West Coast in general that we do, right? Like there's huge homeless, massive drug problems, because those kind of go hand in hand. And, it also makes for weird situations. Like if you or I here in Seattle, if we were to walk down the street with a beer in our hand, we're going to get in trouble, right?
Right.
They sit next to their tent with a keg, just taking keg stands like a champ. They're fine. But if we had a beer in our hand, we're in trouble. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, as you say that, Robert, I don't live far away from Zombie Central.
Yeah.
Which is Kensington, Philadelphia. And I tell you, if you were to just do any bit of research, there has been enough documentaries now where it's not the fentanyl that's doing it. It's something. I don't know. There's this one specific thing that's making these guys look like zombies, like literal zombies.
Well,
where they're
what's weird on the West Coast is we have, especially here locally, is we actually have like what's known as safe injection sites.
yes.
So they'll let you shoot up, and you're just like, what are we doing? Like,
Well, yeah, but I feel like that's why they are. If you were to legalize it, and I know that they are more amenable to that by legalizing everything. Let's legalize it all.
Sure.
Let's make our money so that if you are going to do this, we want our taxes from it.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Might as well make the money off of it as much as we can.
Yep.
And then put those resources back into the exact same situations. So, and that it would control itself. It starts to police itself in that regards.
A little bit.
So I understand that's the thought process when it comes to that type of stuff. It's a little bit of a blight on the eye. I know that, what was it? The country of Chad? Was it Chad or Chaz?
Oh,
there?
Yeah.
That's no longer there anymore, I can imagine. But
No. That did go away. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously the Seattle area dealt with a lot of weird during that. Obviously a lot of the city got beat up during that period. Graffiti all over the place, tent cities kind of under just about every overpass. So, I mean, yeah, it was CHOP. Exactly. So, I mean, it was definitely bad. The city has started to recover a little bit. Obviously that has gone away. They're starting to clean some of the things up, but the homeless situation is unreal. Obviously it will get cleaned up significantly more as we get closer to the World Cup coming to town, because they'll have to. But
I mean, there's so many out there. I mean, they were talking about in total, there was probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 20,000 homeless at the very least. Like just because of
easily.
Yeah. Where are they putting them? Where are they going to go? Like it's.
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny because the legislation is bringing homeless here. They bought a couple of hotels, right? That they then spent a bunch of money to revamp for no reason. And then now they're going to kick all those homeless people back out of them because they're running out of funds. And it's just like, well, yeah, because you wasted millions of dollars to revamp a hotel that was a working hotel. So, I mean, it was in good enough shape to have people in it already. So I'm not really sure what we were planning on there, but they spent a ton of money to revamp the thing, and also delayed allowing homeless people to get in because they were remodeling. And then ultimately, after all of that, they're on the verge of having to shut these things down and kick them all back outside due to lack of funds. And it's like, okay, well, I mean, that just sounded like a misappropriation of funds. Like, you probably could have kept it open longer if you didn't waste a bunch of money remodeling something that was already working.
Right. or realistically, if you want to remodel, you put the people that you're going to house in there to work and maybe start to train them in a
For a
skill.
skill. Exactly. Yeah.
Like that would have been the way to kind of do some of that.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, I can imagine some of this, some of the weirdo things that you would occur, you wind up seeing. You know what I
Yep.
mean? And I mean, I don't know if I'd ever want to go swimming in that pool.
Yeah.
I
100%.
mean,
I
that's
don't.
yeah, that's definitely not. So I mean, but ultimately, it's and I'm not trying to make this all like a political thing. And talk
No,
about how the homeless is because I mean, there is homeless everywhere. You know what I mean?
no,
It's
there
not
definitely is.
just but like I said, when I took the underground tour,
Mhm.
and it's an
Which
interesting tour to
which
take.
is a cool tour. If you come to Seattle, take the underground tour. It is pretty cool. You get to learn some history about the city, especially when you find out that it's all built on fill. So the city is actually a higher elevation than it once was, and that also lets you know that if we get a really good earthquake, that it's going to act like Jello, and it's going to be fun to watch.
That's but you know what, especially being a mason, like a stonemason by trade, the architecture out there is really kind of cool, just the way that they did
For sure.
it kind of looks like an old western town in certain areas, and that's interesting to see just the way they did things, and how they went about it, and how they built some of this stuff. It is kind of cool just to see. Like I said, I'm a stonemason, so when I look at stone buildings and things like that, I'm like, wow, that's cool how they did that here. And because it's, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's a fairly new town. I mean, it's like only what, 200 years old,
Yep.
Seattle.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
Overall. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, or maybe even less. I think it was like, obviously, Seattle really started to come into its own like after the gold rush of 1849. So
Yep.
that's where they started to go. They started to go west, and then started to go up north.
Yep.
So and how far is Deadwood? Deadwood is in Oregon, right? Like I thought, like because I
Yeah.
remember the
Yeah. So I
show
mean,
on.
you're what? I don't know. You're probably, I don't know, 500 miles, roughly, something like that, somewhere around in there.
Got you. I mean, so there's a lot of different things that you'd be able to check out over there, and of course. Um, Yeah, and I can imagine that there's a lot of that. I mean, Paul, it's an epidemic everywhere. The world is changing so dramatically, and how that people have to live. Before it used to be that it's like, we're going to try to protect our own, and now we don't care about protecting our own. It's
Yeah.
always we're going to spend the money in other places in other ways, and you know,
Yep.
all it does is that the money continues to change hand to people with money,
Yeah.
and none of the money actually goes to anybody who's actually needs it. So, but speaking of which, we need it. So, Buffalo Wild Wings, if you are watching, we could use the sponsor. I have now started tagging them. We got a
Nice.
hashtag and that.
Nice.
So, yes, Buffalo Wild Wings. We mention you guys every show. We don't know why you haven't come to us yet
Right.
and said, hey, we would like to sponsor you guys. So anybody who knows anybody from Buffalo Wild Wings, share it to them. Let them know that we
Absolutely.
are their biggest supporters, and
No
that
doubt.
they should
And,
definitely.
if you know of a coffee company, because, I drink a fair amount of it, and, could use some coffee.
Yeah, I'm not a coffee drinker. Actually,
Yeah.
I have never had coffee in my life.
Really?
I've taken one sip one time. They made half coffee, half hot chocolate because they thought it would
Okay.
take away the bitterness. I
Sure.
took a smallest of a sip, just about gagged and spit it out, and that was my only time ever drinking coffee ever. So that Cape Luwak, the one that has the cats eat the berries, or
Oh,
the
yeah, yeah,
coffee
yeah.
berries, and then poops them out and get that. You're never going to get that. I'm never going to drink that. You know,
Fair enough.
and then come to find out that there was another one. When you start looking at stuff like that, there was another one that elephants eat
Okay.
and then poop out the cherries, and then they cook that. So now it's like everybody's trying to put something in the mix. Like, hey, we're going to go through poop. I don't know if I'm really interested in having that job. Yeah.
Yeah. Could you imagine being the one that has to go collect those berries?
Yeah, yeah, I'm gonna go after the coffee cherries because our pet elephant just went to the bathroom. Thank you.
Imagine talking about that job when you first meet somebody. They're like, "Oh yeah, so what do you do?" You're like, "Oh, I kind of sift through piles of poop." So anyway,
Exactly. So yeah, I'm not. So I trust me, I'm Italian, so I have done the sambuca, and it's like the espresso. I think you have to be brought up on coffee, and I never was. So it was always looked at because I was always ADHD, and we didn't know the things back growing up. So coffee was never something that they wanted me to have because the caffeine was just going to. They thought make things worse.
amplify it. Yeah.
Yeah. So instead, they gave me a lot of, what was it, Hawaiian punch or whatever. And then you found out that the red dye made people go nuts. The red dye is like the worst thing in the world, along with the corn syrup that would make you,
Yeah, it's actually probably worse than coffee would have been.
exactly. So, so yeah, but ultimately it's, yeah, I have with the coffee beans in there. I have tried it. It's I don't eat the coffee beans. I just do the sambuca and spit out the beans, and there it is. You know what I mean? It's so yeah. I'm not that guy. But I can make a mean hot chocolate, and there are certain hot chocolates out there that are amazing hot chocolates. Like if I go crazy on the hot chocolate, there's some that I purchased that are over like $40 for a small container of hot chocolate. But it's caffeinated hot chocolate, like, and it's some of the best stuff out there. It's like I drink my coffee in the morning as I drink the V8 energy drinks. And that's I drink one every morning, and that's my coffee in the morning. It's got just as much caffeine in there as like a cup of coffee or a soda, and I get to do my thing there. So, but anyways, we are at the top of the hour, and we're going to be.
Well, I was going to say, if the parent company to V8 wants to sponsor us also.
Hey, I would love that. If you give me, like I said, I'll start showing the cans. I mean, I drink it every day. V8 energy juice. That's where it is. Bam,
product placement
right there.
and everything. We got
exactly. I drink it every day. I could pull out 5 cans in this trash can at least.
Oh, funny.
Every morning, and I just drink one a day. Sometimes I drink 2. You know what I mean? But the one is like later in the day and stuff like that. So,
Gotcha.
But yeah, that's always. So yes, V8, if anybody knows V8, and really that's Campbell here. So V8 is a Campbell product. So they're right over here in Jersey. So definitely come, let me know, or Red Bull. I drink a lot of Red Bull too, especially with my vodka. You know what I mean? So had I had more Red Bull yesterday, I probably wouldn't have been so ready to go upstairs at 10 o'clock at night. But yeah, that's a different story for another time. But anyways, we are at the top of the hour. We're going to do our station identification, and then we will be back for the second hour of Coast to Coast. We're Jayless today. Like I said, Jay is off on assignment. He's assigned to something, and he's doing it. So we will have him back again tomorrow. So in the meantime, you just get the two of us for the whole next hour of Coast to Coast. We'll be back in just a few moments. I mean, you can see right now, without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboy fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this team.
I'm ready.
I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face.
Oh, from Brooklyn.
Hey, get it each.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you. Your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Supporting the needs of our veterans. That's the goal of all of us at Team AmVets. Like Mitch, Carlos, and Kevin from our Welcome Home team that brings furniture to our vets.
We are Team AmVets.
Or Linda from our thrift stores who brings you great bargains every day.
I am Team AmVets.
And John, who picks up your thrift store donations that support California veterans programs.
I am Team AmVets.
Visit our website or a Team AmVets thrift store to donate or shop today.
Join the team!
This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
Mr. Green? Mr. Green?
Yeah.
You need any help? I just want you to know, I think you're the best ever.
Yeah, sure.
Want my Coke? It's okay, you can have it.
No.
Really, you can have it.
Okay.
A Coke and a smile makes me feel good, makes me feel nice.
Be around.
That's the way it should be. I like to say,
Hey, kid.
the whole world is smiling with me. Coca-Cola as life. Have a Coke and
Thanks, Mean Joe.
smile.
Love showing those old, that one specific. I used to tell people that I was the kid in that commercial.
Oh, that's funny.
And so I actually have a Mean Joe Green jersey. It's one of two jerseys that I own that aren't like Philadelphia sports based, for the most part.
Sure.
And of course, it was a white jersey that he threw. I have a black jersey, but I used to tell people all the time, like, yeah, I was the kid in the commercial. So half of the Pittsburgh fan base that knows me, that follow me on TikTok and stuff like that, think that it's me.
Oh, that's funny.
So, because and but I also tell them I've done it. I'm like, I was lying about that. It was just funny, but they don't. It is what it is. But I like them old commercials. Those commercials kind of remind you of a different day, where and it was funny. They said the making of that commercial, it took all day to shoot it and such like that, and that he had to drink so many Cokes that he was like sick for like 3 days afterwards because he had to drink like 64 of those Cokes.
Oh,
wow. Because they had how many takes?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it was they didn't really, they had to splice using tape and stuff like that most of the time. It's like the reel to reels were really reel to reel.
True.
So,
True.
But anyways, so going back to talking sports or not, because we do a little bit of both here across the board. So Monster Energy is where you get your energy. I don't know. I'm not a Monster Energy fan. It's like, again, this is where like the Red Bull came on town.
Like I think they just don't taste bad, which is why I don't drink them. But
yeah, and you know what? It's interesting because most places don't have Monster Energy on, so it's like you'll get a vodka Red Bull, not a vodka Monster.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So it never really pulled out the way it was. Like here, in our area, they had Red Bull, and then somebody came up with an equivalent called Roaring Lion.
Okay.
And Roaring Lion was the closest to Red Bull without really being Red Bull. And it was very similar. It was cheaper. And that was the reason why, because you could put it on the gun. And you could, if you ask for a vodka Red Bull, you got a vodka Roaring Lion, and 9 times out of 10, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. It had a little bit more of an orangey flavor to it.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of how that, and because Red Bull is orange flavored. You just don't ever know that. It's
Yeah.
like, I mean, that's it is. It's the essence of orange is in that, drink of some sort. So when they do the blueberry ones or like all those other flavored ones, they change the essence of whatever it is, that orange flavor, to the blueberry or to cola or to whatever.
Yeah.
Which brings me back to like Jolt Cola, which was all the sugar and twice the caffeine.
Yeah.
Yeah. That stuff was great. But so going back into the news and such like that, Bijan Robinson said that he is going to gain 2,000 yards in this upcoming season.
I mean, they're in a division that isn't great. They probably have a coach that's going to remember he's there, so that'll help. So it'll depend on what they do at quarterback, whether or not that's accurate. But, I mean, he'll have the opportunity just because, again, the defenses within that division aren't exactly world beaters. So, but 2,000 is a lofty goal.
It is a lofty goal. But, I mean, he should be well rested since they didn't really use him well this year.
Or sometimes at all.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was so frustrating, especially as he was one of my running backs this year on my fantasy team. And which didn't matter because I did win my fantasy championship for the first time ever in my fantasy career. I was the champion. I am going to have that trophy here sooner than later. It's going to be prominently displayed here in, on my mantle over here, my fireplace. Yeah, like that's not my real.
I mean, you could have really beat up on some people had he actually participated in games.
Yeah, tell me about it. He did have some good games.
He did have a few. Yeah.
My running backs were weak. It was my wide receivers that carried me because I had and tight ends. I had a couple of good tight ends. In fact, because we had 2 flex positions.
Okay.
So you were allowed to play 3 running backs, but you weren't allowed to play 4 or 3 wide receivers, but not 4. You couldn't have both flexes be like wide receivers or running backs. So I played 2 tight ends most of the season because I didn't have strong enough running backs. I did have strong enough wide receivers. I could have played all my wide receivers, but then I wouldn't have been able to win. So, and my quarterback was Jalen Hurts, which was enough. So Jalen Hurts did score a lot of points, a lot of weeks. That if he did have a bad week, he would rush in for a touchdown, and it was always rushing some. So it wound up being good for me. But saying that he's going to have, I mean, he didn't have, but he set the Falcons rookie record for scrimmage yards with 976 rushing and 478 receiving. So he had the most by a rookie ever, but
and when you think
of another 1,000 yards,
I mean, that's the thing is he almost rushed for 1,000, and there were entire games where he didn't need to suit up.
Yeah, well, he didn't. I guess because the coach was like, "Yeah, everybody thinks we're going to run him, so we're not going to run him."
It's not like 1,000 yards is that impressive anymore now that you have 17 games, right?
Correct.
I mean, it's not 1,000 yards when you played 14 games. You're like, okay, like you got to be out there doing work every week. 1,000 yards at 17 games, you're not really rushing a ton. Like that, those aren't crazy numbers anymore.
Right. No. You I my thought is that 1,200 yards is like the new 1,000. You know, like that's really what, that a running back should gain 1,200 yards in a season. A good running back, a bad running back could get. Yeah, then you have the next tier. You have the 1,200 to 1,000 and stuff like that, and so on and so forth. And realistically, I mean, like I said, you have to consider the fact that a lot of these running backs now are also receivers. I mean, Atlanta was big on that. They used a receiver for the longest time. That was like the perfect case scenario for my previous years. I would have that guy on my fantasy team because he would be a receiver, but he was really a running back. So, it's like ultimately
that's how they used Debo for a long time, right? It's why he had to have a contract dispute. Like, hey, I'm not a running back. I don't want to get hurt. Stop using me as a running back. So.
Yeah, but I mean, ultimately, now he's just crying about the fact that there was no excuses on why he lost this Super Bowl.
No doubt.
There's no excuses. They're like, oh, well, we didn't have a quarterback. Well, you did. So, too bad, so sad, you lose. I love it when 49ers cry.
So speaking of football, we got we got some coaches in college football that I got a question for you on. Who do you think has the most to prove / has the most pressure on them? Bama with DeBoer, James Franklin for Penn State, Lincoln Riley at USC, or Ohio State with Ryan Day?
Off the top of my head, Franklin.
Yeah.
Franklin has had now, my thought is that he absolutely has to beat at least Michigan this year.
I feel like Ryan Day has to do that exact same thing.
From Ohio State?
Yeah.
Well, same situation, but Ohio State, I feel that.
Because I think Franklin gets another year no matter what. I think Ryan Day, if he loses that game, could be fired.
Oh, thank God it's at the end of the season.
I mean, not that colleges typically fire coaches midseason anyway, but I feel like, especially with Michigan not having all the talent that they've had, and Harbaugh, like if you lose that game now, I think it's a wrap. Plus, you have Chip Kelly behind you now on that roster, on that staff. So, they have somebody they could elevate if they wanted to move on. Like for me,
Chip Kelly's on
their
the
offensive coordinator now. Yeah, he moved from UCLA. He was going to get fired at UCLA anyway, but he probably would have had one more year. But he moves on and becomes the OC for Ohio State. Although at the end of the day, I think the biggest pressure cooker is going to be DeBoer in Alabama, because you got to come in after Nick Saban, and you got to come into a team that was in the Final Four. So you're going to have crazy pressure to be good immediately. I
agree. It's funny that we talked about this the other day, and now they say that it is going to be a 14-team tour format. It's 12 teams for the next 2 years, and then 14 and 26. So only Team 1 and Team 2 is going to be the ones. Everybody else is going to be more like, the number 1 seed and the number 2 seed are going to be the only ones with a bye. Everybody else is going to have to play into that, I guess. Or the number 1 seed. The number 1 seed has got to be the one that gets the bye, because everybody else is going to have to play.
Yeah.
Something like that. I don't know how that all works out, but
okay. Still, it's a real playoff system. I'm happy about that.
Exactly. And it's interesting because you bring up, Nick Saban, and he was had an interview, and he's like, "Yeah, what we have now is not college football. It's no longer college football. This is professional light." Excuse me.
Yeah, bless you. It's actually worse than that, because these players they don't have a contract. They can go wherever they want. As a UW fan, of course.
Right. And
Yes,
does
he
the
does.
Penn State guy have any pressure? Absolutely, he does. He has yet to win any of the 5-star games. Like, he has not beaten Ohio State. He has not beaten Michigan. This year, he absolutely has to beat Michigan. Right now, you have to have that game has got to be your number one priority to win. You may lose to Ohio State because Ohio State is one of those teams that you always lose to. But it's like, I think that you absolutely have to beat Michigan. Have to beat Michigan. Michigan is there for the taking. You better beat them, because if you don't beat them, you're going to get fired. I think
Well,
that's
and directly address that. All 4 of these coaches have pressure. That's why I put this together. Like, all 4 of these guys have very real pressure to perform. For Franklin, it's exactly that, right? Like, who have you beat? Yeah, your records have been okay, but you haven't beat anybody. Lincoln Riley, that's a school that wants to be a winner, has historically been a winner. They, if they come up short, there's going to be, problems. Obviously, Ryan Day has had a lot of conversation. There was a lot of speculation he might have got fired after this last season. So, just because they weren't able to beat Michigan, and they haven't beat them, the last 3 or 4 years. So, and of course, DeBoer, going into the situation he is, there's a long track history of being excellent. And they were, again, in that conversation this last year. So you're going to go into a situation where they keep a lot of those kids. And so you better be able to come in and ball out. Now, the thing that'll help Franklin is the fact that it is an expanded playoff picture now, right? So you can potentially get into this 12-game, even if you didn't beat one of the top-ranked teams just based on your record. Now,
depending, you could still lose. You could lose both those games, and in theory, still make it into the playoffs.
Well, and that's what I'm talking about. Is he'll be able to potentially get into the playoffs even with losing that, and it'll be viewed as a step forward over what they've done in the past, even though it's kind of not really. But and then ultimately probably get smoked in the playoffs anyway. But I think he can buy himself a little bit of time, only because of the expanded playoffs. I think if he were to lose those 2 games, and there wasn't the expanded, he's probably out. So I think it actually buys him a little bit of time, because he'll be able to say, oh yeah, but we got into the playoffs this year. So yeah, I mean, I think I think a couple of these guys could be saved by that. Whereas a guy like Ryan Day, you lose to Michigan again, it's probably over. DeBoer, that fan base will run him out of town if they struggle.
Oh, no doubt. As I'm looking at this right here, it's just like, DeBoer replacing Saban at Alabama is a privilege. He's got to say all the right things and stuff like that. He's got to kiss the ring and all that other fun stuff.
Thanks for jumping in, Chad.
Do you think that he's actually ready for that?
I mean, he was in the national championship this last year, right? So it's not like the moment was too big for him. So I think he can perform well. Whether or not he does, we have yet to see. But I do believe he has the skill set to make it work. He is a good coach. He was able to coach at a high level. Realistically, outside of some early mistakes in the national championship game, and then, obviously just the letdown at the end. But they were a little too aggressive on defense to start that game. And then through the middle, it was a pretty tight battle back and forth. And then at the end, they were trying to do too much to overcome, the deficit that they were behind. And, they made some mistakes. But, I mean, they played that game tough against a Michigan team that was an amazing team, right? Like, they had a lot of NFL guys, top-notch coaching. That was going to be a tough out no matter who played them.
Right. And I don't know that, with all the people that are going, what are they expecting? Somewhere around 12 guys from Michigan to go to the pros over the 7 picks that they're talking, maybe like 7 rounds that they're going to have, like possibly 12 guys go, and then probably more that will be unrestricted undrafted free agents that will go and wind up on teams as well. That they are likely to have.
Some of them just graduated out too. So I mean, there is some of that element also. But I mean, even the UW, right? Like that's going to be a wildly different team going into this next year because they have 13 of their guys being brought to the combine, right? And then of I think it was 22 players that were going to be returning, 20 of them are all hit the transfer portal, and it's all new coaching staff. So I mean, that's a UW team that's going to go from the national title game to, I don't know if they'll be a ranked team this next year.
Yeah, probably not, unless all of a sudden things come together in a way that they weren't really expecting.
Yeah, exactly.
Plus the fact that they now they're not really playing anybody at all. I mean, they don't really have, like, what's their schedule going to look like? I figure most of the tough teams that you were going to play against aren't even in that conference anymore.
No, I mean you're going to have decent competition. Like none of them are going to be as stacked as the Pac-12 was this last year, where for most of the year just about the whole conference was ranked. Which, yeah, I mean, that was crazy. Hadn't seen that for Pac-12 in a long time. Let's see, Big Ten.
I mean, the Big Ten's got like 37 teams now.
Yeah, well, exactly. So, I mean, you're going to have good teams in there because you're going to have Oregon, right? Oregon's going to be a good team again. Michigan is a question mark. Ohio State, right? Those are all Big Ten teams. So I mean, you're going to have competition for sure. And I don't know exactly.
Well, is Washington moving? Washington didn't move to the Big Ten, did they?
Yeah, they did. Yeah. The only two Pac-12 teams is Washington State and Oregon State.
Got you. And that's why I said I thought that they were going to actually just become the Mountain West. They could move to the Mountain West and make that the Pacific. And realistically, that could be the Pac-12. And
it would be. And the thing is it still wouldn't be a Power 5 conference. Because the Mountain West only has one real football school, and that's Boise State, right? So that means what? You're going to, in your conference, you're going to have Boise State, Oregon State, Washington State. Right. And none of those are like hallmark football schools. They're good. Like they're good teams as of late. Right. Oregon State's building a nice program. Washington State is wildly inconsistent. They have years where they're good. They have years where they're terrible. And then Boise State is, the consistent leader of that division, but there's nobody else in that division.
Where did Stanford go? Is Stanford still part of the Pac, or is it?
No, they can't be because the only two actual teams there.
Okay. So I don't know. I mean, I assume that Stanford was part of the Pac, but I might have been way off in the first place. And not that they're any good anymore. I mean, they really have fallen off a lot. But yes. I thought that Stanford was part of like UCLA and USC and stuff like that. Like that was part of.
Well, those all moved also, though.
Right.
Yeah. So Stanford and Cal are moving to the ACC.
That makes sense. That makes sense to me.
And then, Colorado and Utah, they all moved to the Big 12. So I mean, basically everybody except Wazoo and Oregon State dispersed over different conferences.
Got you. And what do you figure they're waiting on?
Oh, they took over the conference. So they're not really, they're going to try and revive this thing because they are the controlling bodies of that conference now. So they're going to try and revive it. I don't know how you're going to do that. They basically have a 2-year grace period to figure it out. And then, so we'll see what happens there. But I mean, you're never going to recreate what the Pac-12 was because all of those schools went to other conferences, and now they're becoming these super conferences basically. So I don't really foresee them being able to keep that thing alive. Ultimately, they'll probably, at the end of these 2 years, after they're done collecting all the money that was still owed to the Pac-12, they'll ultimately go to other conferences as well. I would actually imagine them both going to the Big Ten and creating a 20-team conference that actually has a lot of West Coast teams. And maybe they end up doing divisions within the conference thing again.
Yeah, like almost like a three division conference, where it's I know they have the East and the West kind of. And,
well, they actually did away with it. So there's no divisions within the Pac-10 anymore. Or Big Ten. So it's 18 schools and they're all together. Like there's no divisions.
Got you.
Which is bizarre.
Well, that was because you had lesser teams in that West division that you would wind up going up against for the Big Ten championship, and there never should have even been anything close to that. You know what I mean? It should be.
For sure.
The problem is that they also would have Ohio State and Michigan play the last game of the season. So ultimately, whoever won that game was going to be part of the championship. And rather than realistically playing in the very beginning of the season, if you played Michigan in the very beginning of the season, that you would likely had Ohio State and Michigan play for the championship as well, where the top two teams kind of played it out that way. But now, I mean, with the way that this is set up, there's going to be potential that there's going to be a year that Ohio State doesn't play Michigan.
It's possible. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
imagine that.
It's possible.
Yeah. I mean, because you got to keep some of these traditions in place still, I would think. You want to be able to do that, but
and that's part of one of the things that was put in by the NCAA with Washington and Washington State, right? The Apple Cup is what we call that rivalry game. And so for the next, I want to say it's through 26 or 27. I don't remember exactly. They basically were going to make it so that Washington and Washington State still play each other. Beyond that, as big as that conference is, right? 18 games. You start running out of room for out of conference games, right? Because you just have so many within your own conference. So I would bet money that the reason that they slated it for the end of 26 or 27, whatever it was, is because that's the end of the grace period for the Pac-12. Makes me think that the NCAA is betting on the fact that the Pac-12 fails and those two last schools ultimately have to join other conferences. And then from there, if they do have them go into the Big Ten, then that rivalry can continue, right? Because now you're in the same conference again. You bring that rivalry back in. If they go to the Big 12 or SEC or whatever they end up doing, then obviously that gets renegotiated, or maybe it goes away altogether. Tough to say, but it makes it look like the NCAA is almost hedging its bet on the Pac-12 will fail.
Oh, I could almost guarantee that, because a 2-team conference is not going to last very long.
Not at all.
But there again, I guess they're trying to, because as I think about the teams out there that could be considered Pac teams, and you have perennial Division II champions of North Dakota State and South Dakota State universities. You have Boise State out there who could probably move over, and now you've got, realistically there's 3 more teams that could start to create that Pac-5. So going to the ACC is not going to be, I think the ACC is a weak conference in general. So, I guess you could maybe steal Stanford back, or see if you get, Yeah,
I mean, but would you even do that? Or, I mean, because at that point, why wouldn't you just join the Mountain West? They're already set. You just be adding 2 schools instead of trying to drag everybody over to the Pac, right? Like,
well, that's what I'm saying. Actually, the Mountain West is not like, And I don't know. I guess it's going to depend on who's running the conference over there. Because it's all matter of money. It's all
It
matter of
is.
money. And
Well,
so
and
I'm
and
talking about Boise being one team coming
yes,
from the Mountain West, but NDSU and SDSU are not part of the Mountain West. Those are whole other teams
yep.
that there. And then I mean, I guess you could kind of say, you know, I mean, I don't know. I got to assume Gonzaga has a football team. You know what I mean? They just you
Yeah,
don't never hear about them because they stink.
yeah. I actually don't even know if they have a football program, honestly. But yeah, I mean, there's lower level schools that you could try and go get, but I mean, that's not gonna keep you as a power conference, right? Like
Right. It's
those
not a
aren't the
matter of
schools
saying
that
it's
are
a power conference. It's a matter of survival.
well.
Let the power conferences start to actually work their way in as when you start getting money. See, and that's where the money comes into play because you want the money to go to the schools so that they can afford some NILs.
Sure.
So now, so like for instance, Montana, which is really a Division II school. You know what I mean? I think they are. I think they don't really even, you know, I don't think they're Division 1. But if you had Montana as part of in the pack and they started to receive some of that money, you may be able to get one of the lower tier NILs to show
Maybe.
up there, and you start making that. Then you start growing that conference in a different way. You start saying, okay, this is, all you have to do is go 12-1 and there's a good chance that you could be looked at highly enough to get into the 12 or 14 in 2026.
Sure. No, and that's definitely true. I mean, you don't necessarily have to be a Power Five conference to get into this, you know, playoff setup. So, I mean, they're going to have another conference champion get in there for sure. But at the same time, if you haven't beat anybody, there's still going to be some voting involved. So it's not solely on record. There's the AP votes are still part of the process. So, I mean, if all you beat up on were low level D1 schools, those wins don't mean a ton, right? When you have, like, if you were an undefeated team or a 1-loss team, but you didn't play anybody and you're going up against a team that's in the, Big Ten and you have a couple of losses, you lose to Ohio State and you lose to Michigan or Oregon or Washington or whatever, right? Those losses are against good schools, right? So, I mean, It's not like you lost to Tulane or Temple or, it's not like you lost to an actual football school. And whereas a 1 loss as Washington, because you lost to, I don't know, some obscure school because that's what you could get on your schedule. Your 12-win season doesn't mean as much, right? Because there's voting. And so do I think that conference champion gets in? Yeah, I mean, probably. But you're not going to have more than one school go.
Right. Correct. You're not. But ultimately, if you are that team, you're going to wind up again. That's where, I mean, that was the problem Boise State had. Yep. Boise State was like they went undefeated and they wound up beating a really good team in the bowl game. You know what I mean? With the 2-point conversion. Ultimately, they probably could have made some type of splash. Didn't they beat Michigan? Was it Michigan that they beat? With the 2-point conversion?
No, let's see. Michigan, Michigan went undefeated, actually.
No, I'm not talking this past year. I'm talking when Boise State was doing their thing and they wound up going into.
Oh, yeah, I think you're right.
I think they beat Michigan. So those are the things that, could happen, that you're going to have those opportunities because they're going to be forced onto the laps of these guys. That, yes, if you are a team that's beating these other teams handily and you're winning by 20 and 15 and, points, they're going to have no choice but to look at you. They may not be quality wins, but
No.
they're going to be quality enough.
But you'll have to win them that way. Like you'll have to be putting them away early and like, stacking points on them, because if they're close games against unranked or just kind of lower level teams, all of a sudden those hit not like a win should hit, right? Because college still has style points, right? Like if it's a bad team, you have to dunk on them. Like you gotta put a ton of points on them and make a statement. Because if you play a low level team and it's close, they're like, oh, what's wrong with the team? If you happen to lose, I mean, that can tank your season.
Right. That losing a game very early, because that's why I said I was a little frustrated about the fact that both Texas, like that Georgia didn't make it into the playoffs this year, when all they did was lose one game by 3 points to Alabama. And because of that, they were out, because at one point Texas won.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And it was so ridiculous. And then, of course, then you have Florida State that went undefeated, had the quality wins, was able to win the championship without their quarterback and stuff like that, but still wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
So that was the reason why there's never going to be another time when, unless they really do stink, that Georgia is not going to be in it, that Alabama is not going to be in it, that Texas is not going to be in it. Florida is going to be in it every year. Like, it's just, they're going to be perennials. That you're going to see Notre Dame in the mix because they couldn't make it in there any other way. So they're going to always be the number 11 or 12 team, because they couldn't make it in any other way because they stink. I'm not a Notre Dame fan even a little bit.
I mean, Notre Dame's always just a weird thing because they are an independent, only on their football program, but they're an independent. And so, like, it's got to be weird to fill out a roster, or a schedule being that way anyway. Like, that's got to be a bizarre way to try and make a schedule.
Right. Well, I mean, that's why they get to play Army and Navy.
Exactly.
And, it's like, because the Air Force is even part of the Mountain West. You know what I mean? They have a conference, so that's why they don't play the Air Force. But the Army and Navy both are independents. Same type of situation. That's why they're playing Temple, and that's why they're playing, like Connecticut and things like that. Because, listen, our last time Army and Navy were anywhere in the rankings, they were number 1 and number 2 because it was the draft. So, and that's how that all occurred. But ultimately, you're not seeing any of these teams ever get back in the rankings. And if they are, it's because they have one guy who's such a great quarterback and is able to rush for 2,000 yards and throw for 700 yards, which is a lot for any of those teams. And, and get them into the top 20 per se, because they happen to be beating teams. Except, it doesn't matter how great Army was. The last time I think Army was ranked 22nd, they went into Navy, who had only won 3 games all season long, but they left that game winning their 4th.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, the one thing that you could be sure of all year long, if you follow Navy, the team Navy, that something that they will say all year long is beat Army.
Yep.
That's a rallying cry, and
game.
It doesn't matter who they're playing against. You know what I mean? It's, it's like the Eagles fan saying Dallas sucks. When you are at away stadiums, like when we're up in New York and, we want to start to try to get along with the other team's fans, just start doing Dallas sucks, and everybody starts to join in. And that's everywhere. Even 49ers fans, Dallas sucks. Pittsburgh, Dallas sucks. Everybody knows that Dallas sucks.
Yeah.
So, shame Jay's not here, because I'm sure he would love that. Even though he's a bandwagon from Houston.
Yeah. No, it's funny. So, talking about the Pac-12 here, they have a new commissioner, right? They force George Klavkoff out, right? Who was the orchestrator of blowing this thing up anyway, right? Like his leadership is what burned this thing to the ground. So they appoint Teresa Gold. So the first female commissioner of a Power 5 conference. So, congrats to her. But, some of that I think had to do with nobody's going to come from one of the other conferences to take that role, right? Because this is a conference that has a 2-year grace period, and then who knows what's going to happen to it, right? So nobody's going to leave a job where they're at to come take this on in something that, let's be honest, the ship is burning and you're going to try and do something with it. And what you get to put it out with is a glass of water, right? So you're not exactly set up for success here. And then, I hope she has success at it. There's tradition of the Pac-12 that you'd like to see live. But at the same time, she was a former assistant director and former assistant commissioner of this conference during this era, right? So, she was on this leadership staff that burned this thing to the ground. So, I mean, I may not have a lot of faith in someone that was involved in lighting the thing on fire to then put it out. I don't know. I hope she has success, but the track record makes me think that this thing is 2-year grace period and it's a wrap.
Okay. Well, I guess we will see.
Find out. Time will tell.
Yeah. And I kind of agree with you. I think that it's a shame that the Pac-12 is, or Pac-10 or the Pac is going to disappear. Yeah. Was Hawaii part of the Pac?
No.
It's Mountain West.
There were a few schools that were also lightly affiliates. They weren't part of it, but they would get included in some of the scheduling. So I never really did quite get how it is that worked. They were basically Pac-12 affiliate schools, which I always thought was just kind of a bizarre thing. Why not just become part of the conference? But I don't know.
No, I hear that. I that's why I kind of think I'm like this. I'm trying to help in terms of they could get this team. Truth of the matter is they could get no team. You know what I mean? It's just join the ACC. So that's what you're trying. That's what you're going to do. You want to get on a lesser team, lesser conference. Join the Big East.
There you go.
Yeah.
No, I mean, ultimately, that's why I say I think this thing fails. They ultimately absorb into another conference. The Big Ten makes the most sense because then they get to join the schools they already have rivalries with, history with. They round out the conference to 20 teams. So then you could do 2 10-team divisions, right? An East Coast and a West Coast. And, then all of a sudden that conference makes sense. But we'll see.
Yeah. Well, listen, I wish them all the best. And it's I don't ever watch college football much anyways. So it's just it's just a feeder program for the NFL. And I start hearing names when they go through the combines and things like that. And, it's I have, I wait to hear, when I'm at the draft, I want to hear positions.
Yeah.
I could care less the names. It's the position. Sure. If you choose my position, then I am happy about it. First round picks always should be offensive and defensive linemen. That's how that should be. If I hear that you went ahead and you got a safety, that safety better
be fast.
Really be a great safety. That better be a monster safety. If you're doing quarterback, I would have already heard all about this quarterback. When there's no chance. When they surprised us when we were at the COVID draft. And I remember as I'm doing my video for the COVID draft, I'm sitting there and I'm doing a live on YouTube and Facebook and all this stuff. And they chose Jalen Hurts. I remember my face going, how about that? It's
good.
I'm wow, a second round pick for a quarterback. Okay. Okay. You know what I mean? It's like, obviously they must know what they're doing. And luckily enough, they did. You know, they kind of knew that that there was some stuff that was going on with, Carson Wentz. And, unfortunately, he didn't pan out. And now we have Jalen Hurts. And, it's, that, the rest is history.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll really see, because obviously Jalen Hurts is also right now in that area. Like, oh, okay, is he good? Is he not good? We still don't know. I know 2 years ago I said I wanted to see 10 more games. He was 9-1 in those 10 games. And then ultimately went to the Super Bowl, and you could arguably say that he won the MVP of that Super Bowl had he not fumbled the ball, that even in a loss that he outplayed Patrick Mahomes.
No, I would agree with that. Not that I think a losing team player will ever win the Super Bowl MVP, but you're supposed to be able to. But I don't think that'll ever happen again, right? So
yeah, like I said, there's never going to be a losing player.
Not
There would have to be something really remarkable that player did.
It'd have to be phenomenal.
Right. Because ultimately, whatever is phenomenal on the one side, the other side has got to match it to win.
Exactly.
So like if somebody rushes for like 250 yards and 3 touchdowns, and because ultimately that's kind of what he did. He threw for 300 yards. He had the one fumble. The one fumble is really what kind of caused whatever. Because you take that fumble away, take that 7 points away, all of a sudden we win that game.
For sure. Yeah. Or potentially anyway.
I mean, that's in theory, the points would have made sense, but obviously it wasn't. That wasn't the case. So, that's why Patrick Mahomes wound up winning it. Because, they weren't going to give it to Jalen Hurts in a loss. You just lost the Super Bowl, but you won the MVP. Where are you going to now?
Home.
Yeah, I'm going to go home because I don't feel like going to Disney World and dealing with these assholes all over the place right there. And when I lost.
Yep, exactly.
So, I was just like the one year, like the first year they had to do it with that not showing the MVP. They showed the quarterback. And I think that was, of course, Baltimore, and it was not Joe Flacco, because I think he did win the MVP. It was Trent Dilfer.
Oh yeah.
Trent, you just won the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? Just like you didn't win the Super Bowl MVP because that was the guy that we can't talk to because he just had a whole bunch of stuff going on about killing somebody. But anyways, you just won the Super Bowl. Where are you going?
Yep.
I'm going to Disneyland.
Oh yeah.
Fun stuff. You know what I mean? Good times, noodle salad. I don't know. But anyways, obviously, that's okay. You know what I mean? We're never going to see that. I like seeing it in other sports, though. It's been a while since I've seen it in like hockey, but I know that the Flyers, the goalie for the Flyers won the Conn Smythe Trophy, even losing the Stanley Cup to Edmonton. But literally it was Hextall that was like, he was the reason why they were able to bring Edmonton to 7 games and keep, Wayne Gretzky, Messier, Yari Curry, Grant Fuhr, all of those guys that were very big, Paul Coffey, all of them were all Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
And it was, literally Hextall that kept them in that series and in those playoffs in total. So you do see it on occasion.
Like all-time scorers.
Yes. But they were all on one team. It was all on the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It was an all-star team. That's what that was.
Well, and they had to, again, that was one of those teams where they had to change the rules, because before they would have those coincidental minors and they would skate 4-on-4. And that's how Gretzky scored all those goals. Because when you took two guys off the ice, there was nobody better at being able to skate. He was just too fast. And the other thing about Gretzky that people knew when you played with him, that his peripheral went, like, you would figure it was like 180. His went like 210.
Yeah.
So he could see behind his head, kind of. You know what I mean? Like, and that's a big deal. If you could see behind you a little bit and you know somebody's coming, you could do those passes, and that's why he was able to do, I said,
Well,
you're never going to see another guy score 90-some goals in a season.
No, and like if we're talking about Gretzky, I mean, his just gameplay IQ was next level. I mean, him analyzing where the puck is going to be is second to none. Right. Like he's watching and he's like, I know where this is going. And I mean, he would break off of things, which, I mean, it was impressive to say the least.
Yes. Yes. And, again, when you have those types of guys like Yari Curry and, Paul Coffey and Mark Messier and, like all just name after name after name after name. I mean, they had literally 3 Hall of Fame lines just about. And ultimately, it was, no wonder they won a couple of Stanley Cups.
Yeah.
Because once he went to L.A., I don't remember him winning a cup. And in fact, Mark Messier was able to win a cup over in New York, but he also had a lot of other pieces there as part of the puzzle. So that's what happened back then. They ain't won one since then. Because I know a lot of fans, not necessarily of the Philadelphia Flyers, are fans of me and also hate the Rangers. So, I got a text from a Devils super fan, one of the New Jersey Devils, who paints his face, and he says, we got the Rangers tonight. I says, I got them on Saturday. So, and on Saturday, a lot of New Yorkers will come down to the stadium this year to watch that game. So that'll be fun. Yeah, it should be fun. I mean, I get to do my thing for a little while and hang out and walk around the stadium, take some pictures, but I love beating the Rangers. I love smacking the Rangers around, and the Rangers have a good team this year. So I know that you don't really know much about hockey, but
I don't follow it super close. I follow it closer than I used to. Right.
Well, now you have an actual team.
We have a team. Yeah. I did watch more lower level hockey because we had the Seattle Thunderbirds, we had the Everett Silvertips, so I'd go to some of those games, but didn't watch a ton of NHL because just didn't have a horse in the race and I didn't care about any of the other teams. I'd watch it. I'd watch playoff hockey, right? Like playoff sports, I always get into.
Right. I'm trying to see if where they are at right now to see if they are even close to the playoffs.
What? The Kraken?
You're Kraken, yeah.
Yeah, they are not. They're not.
Yeah, they are.
They'd have to go on a wild run at this point.
Actually, that's not really true. They're 3 points out of the wild card position. And right now, that's the Blues and the Predators are tied for that.
Yeah, but if I remember right, they're kind of trending the wrong direction is the problem.
That could very well be. Let's see how they fared in their last. Yeah, they've just beat the Bruins though.
Yeah, they're not
in Boston.
Is they're not a bad team. They just they haven't closed games, which is why they have so many of the overtime losses, right? They just can't seem to close out the games. They've been in the games. They've been wildly competitive mostly, but they just can't quite get it done, which is something that is different from last year, is they were able to close some of those games out.
Yeah, I believe that's coaching.
Well, and that's what you were talking about, right? So,
I am not a fan of your coach.
Yeah.
And that's that's ultimately, I think, part of the reason why he's not. Yeah, he's a college coach. That's the problem. And I know when he came here, when he came to the NHL, he kind of incorporated some of his college ways, and it's like, okay, you are not a professional coach. And then Hextall, who was our GM at the time, just didn't want to get past it, and it's ultimately wound up, firing. You fired the coach and you fired the GM.
Yeah.
The GM, the Hextall lived and died by the sword. It's like, hey, I don't want to, and it's one thing if you're winning. Listen, you could be a tough SOB to deal with. If you're winning games, it don't matter.
Yeah.
If you're losing and you're an asshole, guess what? Eventually, we don't want to deal with you anymore.
Yeah, it's the Jim Harbaugh effect, right? When he's winning, people are like, all right, I guess I'll deal with you. As soon as you're not winning, they're like, you gotta go.
Yeah. All right, buddy. Out. I'm tired of tired of looking at your ugly mug.
Pretty much.
That's why when you said that the offensive coordinator for Ohio State is now Chip Kelly, I find that interesting.
Right? Like, that's going to be interesting to watch how that works or maybe doesn't.
I'd be happy to watch it not.
I feel exactly the same about Zimmer being brought in for the Cowboys. Like, that combination of Zimmer and McCarthy has disaster written all over it.
Yay! The Flyers right now have the number 3 position in the division, so they have a playoff spot. So as of right this second, they are. How do I put this? Yeah, actually, the next closest team to them, they are 7 points up on the next closest team to us in our division. So the top 3 go. And then it goes to wild cards. The 2 wild card teams are from the other division. I think. Let me make sure of that. Let me see. Make sure I'm talking about it the right way. Yes. Yeah. So both the Lightning and the Red Wings are the teams that have the wild card spots. The next team that is the Devils. And they're dealing with a lot of injuries right now, so they're going to be really hard struck. Catching up 7 points they have 23 games to do it. That's a really tall task. It's not something that you are able to do easily. So, especially when you have the 3-point games, the one thing that you do not want to see if you are behind and trying to catch up on some of the points. Is a 3-point game where one team gets 1 point and the other team gets 2 points. So I don't see that occurring. I think the Flyers are going to make the playoffs, as being the number 3. Because as of right now, even in the wild card spot, we're 4 points behind the number 2 spot and 10 points behind the Rangers. So I think all we got to do is win more games than lose, and we will be in. So,
yeah.
On that being said, we are at the top of the hour. So, we made it 2 hours without being interrupted by a bearded guy,
And we talked about sports the whole time. That is weird.
How about
weird
that?
show?
Yeah, exactly. Most of the time we're talking about what movie and what we had for lunch and things like that. So, this was a great show here. But don't forget, April 1st, anybody who hates on us, April 1st is going to be the day we're going to start releasing that. I'm going to release the code here to bring it on April 1st. So that's absolutely going to happen, everybody. So look for that. We're going to start putting that code out there. But in the meantime, come check us out tomorrow when all 3 of us will be back. Jay will be back from assignment. Otherwise, have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow. Take care.
Take it easy, guys.